Hey everyone, in this video I want to talk about the different ways that you can handle data migration. If you're moving from one ITSM system to another, or replacing a system, or anything like that, uh, some of the different options that you have when it comes to your historical data. And I'm going to ignore the obvious one of like just delete it or don't care about it. This is assuming you want to hold on to your historical data. So the first option you have is to archive it. And this could be as simple as just pulling a SQL backup or something like that, standing it up in a SQL database, and doing nothing else to it. Right? You can still run SQL queries against it. Maybe you can use some BI tools to pull out some of the data, but basically that keeps it in its own little world, and doesn't move it into any new systems or anything like that. Kind of a part two of that is where we actually started our product Cortex, which is, yes, download all of your data to a SQL server, but then use Cortex to view the data. So rather than writing SQL queries or using a BI tool, Cortex is able to figure out the structure of the database and present it in a way that ideally is as similar as possible to the system that it came from. So we started with Cherwell, then we moved into ServiceNow. Both of those systems have a description of how the tables are put together and how some of the UI elements are put together. And so we're able to pull that information out of the database and show you a visualization or an interface that looks very similar to what you were used to in Cherwell or in ServiceNow. Some other systems do similar sorts of things, and so we're adding support for some more systems like that. But at the very least, you still get access to the data in a way that you can view it super quickly and easily, without having to write SQL queries, without having to use a BI tool. It's all right there at your fingertips. Now, kind of on the other end of the spectrum, you have the ability, obviously, to migrate everything. Migrations are time consuming, and depending on how they have to be implemented, depending on the system that you're going to, you might actually still have to build an archive of your system. You might have to pull down the data into a SQL database first anyway, and then start building out these migrations. Now, migrations are challenging because typically the data that you're dealing with is not just a set of records in a table. You also have related data, you have lookup data, you have things like statuses and customers and notes and attachments, and all of the stuff starts to get really, really complicated. And depending on the system that you're going to, there may or may not be an easy way to move all of that data over. So what we suggest, if you do want to migrate some data over, is that you kind of find a middle ground and migrate just what you need. So for instance, if you're moving from one ITSM system to another, you might have some open incidents that were opened like the day you turned off your old system, right? Obviously, you're not going to close them in the old system because they're still being worked, and you don't want to force people to open them fresh in the new system because that's just a pain. Some organizations have tried to do kind of a half and half thing where new stuff gets entered in the new system, but old stuff is still being worked in the old system until you get to some certain point. That can work if you can convince your organization to do it, but that puts the burden on, say the technicians who have to work in two different systems and keep all of that information straight. That can be challenging. So if you do want to move, say, only what you need, the restrictions on what you have to move for each particular record can be a little more flexible, right? Because you can still have an archive for all of the historical stuff to make sure that you have all of the original data for, say, compliance reasons. You can make sure that you have that in place, but you can focus on just moving the important aspects of the important records over into the new system. So for an open incident, you can move the title and the description, maybe the journal notes, maybe attachments, but you don't necessarily have to worry about, if an attachment doesn't go over perfectly fine. If it was too big or it was the wrong file type or something like that, you still have a record in case you need to go back and see it. But you have enough of the ticket that a tech can start working on it. And if there is some manual effort in updating it, it's less of a manual effort than if you tried to migrate thousands or hundreds of thousands of records, and then at that point, how do you know if everything was successful, right? That's kind of the challenge. You end up having to spot check some records, and maybe those records are good, but there are others that failed in kind of quiet ways. Migration is always a challenge, and trying to make sure that everything comes across properly. So if you can migrate as little as possible, that's my recommendation. Now, kind of somewhere in the middle as well, and kind of a different animal, is like an ongoing sync. So a use case for this is actually ServiceNow. This is a common use case. ServiceNow is a cloud-based system, but lots of organizations want a local sync for additional reporting or build it into their data warehouse or something like that. So they use some sort of synchronization where they pull down the tables that they need. And again, this kind of falls into the migrate what you need category, but kind of from a different perspective, right? You might still be pulling down all of the records, but only one table's worth, or one table plus the lookup data. And there are actual like systems that specifically do this, and are designed to pull down just the data that you need in exactly the way that you want to see it. But this is another migration approach where you are doing it in an ongoing fashion, right? It's not just one and done, where you pull down a bunch of data and then that is your archive, or that is your initialization step into a new system. But you need some sort of synchronization periodically, or maybe when a record is updated, you want to make sure that it gets synced across. If you want to get even more complicated, you might need a two-way sync, where if a record is updated in one system, it gets pulled across into another system. If the record gets updated in that other system, it gets synchronized across to the original system. Now, that gets really tricky. And that's actually not something, that last situation, that's not something that Cortex does today. Maybe we'll add it in the future. But everything else that I've described in this video is something that Cortex does today. Again, it started as an archive tool for Cherwell. We got into ServiceNow. It can be used to migrate everything into your new ITSM platform, but that's not what we recommend. We recommend using it primarily as an archive, but also as kind of step one when you're moving to or ready to turn on your new ITSM system as the source of truth. Perform a migration of just the most recent records, just open incidents, or just active changes, or open changes, scheduled changes maybe, something in the realm that you actually need to pull it across. Or maybe you are going to pull across all changes because you do want the historical record of everything that you've done since you started using Cherwell, for instance. So Cortex kind of provides that best of both worlds. You have the archive. You can always go back and see your Cherwell data, but you can also migrate across everything you need in your new ITSM solution. Oh, and also coming up in Cortex 2.3, we have an embed endpoint. So you can actually see all of the data that's in Cortex from within your new ITSM system. We've got videos specifically about that on the channel. I'll try to remember to leave a link to that in the description below, or maybe it'll show up somewhere on the screen. And if you have any other questions, we've got a Discord server. We have a users groups that we have every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. You can find links to those down in the video description. And if the question that you have doesn't get answered there, you can always reach out to us directly and schedule some time, and we'd be happy to talk to you, show you around Cortex, and show you exactly how you can use Cortex for your organization. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.